So you might be finding yourself addicted to thought and not even know it. Mark, what do you have to say about this?
Well, you might as well face it. You're addicted to thought. This is an homage to Robert Palmer, who had a big hit many, many years ago called You Might As Well Face It, You're Addicted to Love.
Uh-huh.
And then the first line is something like, Your lights are off and no one's home. Oh, your lights are on, but no one's home. Your mind is not your own.
Mm-hmm.
And so I
Mm-hmm.
thought I thought that was apropos.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I hope you're joining us on our live stream. If you have any questions, we're gonna go down this road today of how we got addicted to thought. But if you have questions or comments, please put them. We're kind of watching. If you see me look to my left here, I guess that's my left. I have another monitor, so I'm looking at the comments over there, if there are any comments.
Oh,
So
two monitors.
I
Man,
know it.
so good.
Well, I'm an advanced person, so what can I say?
The opulence. So many windows open at all times.
That's right. So I wanted to start today talking about why we're addicted to thought. And this goes back to a couple gentlemen by the name of Piaget and Vygotsky. And I know that probably sounds like right away we got a problem.
Maybe somewhere in Europe?
Well, Piaget,
Maybe.
Piaget is right here. He was a male model from Switzerland. No, actually, he was a biologist.
Little day job, male model on the side, maybe.
Anyway, here is Vygotsky. Now, Vygotsky is Russian, and he is considered, as far as I know from my research, the father of Russian psychology. And
Hmm.
Piaget was Swiss, and these two gentlemen were born in the same year, ironically enough.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And their research really is the basis for what we're going to talk about today because they started in the same place and got to the different destinations. So
Mm.
the most famous
Interesting.
of the two is Piaget. And
Mm-hmm.
Piaget wrote, I've forgotten the name of the book, but it was a theory of cognitive development that he
Okay.
wrote based on studying his daughter. And the
Oh, I think you've mentioned him before.
probably have, yeah. And so
Yeah.
what he did, I mean, I'm sure he's a very good father, but he's also a scientist, and so he's studying the developmental progress that his daughter is making through this whole process of growing up. And
Yeah.
one of the things he noticed was that as a little girl, when she learned how to talk, she started to have a kind of a peculiar communication style that all children do. And he labeled this as egocentric speech.
Okay, that's like the thought bubbles.
Right.
Like when they
But not
just are processing verbally.
but in the beginning, egocentric speech is spoken out loud.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Is
It's
what,
not
yeah,
in your
I did
head,
say
it's
that
out
though.
loud.
Right.
Okay. So anyway, so Piaget labeled this egocentric speech. Well, what is egocentric speech? Egocentric speech is the child talking out loud to themselves about themselves without any real expectation anybody else is going to hear them or respond.
Totally. Yeah, children do that.
And well,
Even
you're
my son will sometimes, my son will I'll answer him and he'll be like, "Oh, you heard me?" And he's like 9. Like, "Yeah, when you speak out loud, I can hear you."
now this all goes. Now this is just background. This all goes to why we're addicted to thought. So
Yeah.
so anyway, Piaget's doing this study and he notices this egocentric speech. Well, Vygotsky noticed the same thing, only Vygotsky called it private speech.
Mm-hmm.
But Piaget was much more famous than Vygotsky in the West, and so we call it egocentric speech.
Uh-huh.
Now, Vygotsky is very famous because he not only studied childhood development, but he theorized that children construct their knowledge. Development cannot be separated from its social context. Prior conceptions and new concepts are interwoven, and language plays a central role in mental development. But we're not going to
Mm-hmm.
get into too much of all that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's see where this takes us. So here's Piaget and here's Vygotsky. Now, what they both noticed was that around 6 to 7 years of age, maybe 5 to 7, um, the egocentric speech of a child would disappear.
Okay.
They would
Right
no
about when your
longer.
prefrontal cortex starts developing.
Well, what happens is that Piaget theorized that the egocentric speech was extinguished because of neural development, but Vygotsky theorized that the egocentric speech was not extinguished, that it went inside and became inner speech.
Yeah, and that really matches up with experience.
Right, and as you just said, it's all related to neural development.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
so but if we take this a step further, then they started studying this and they found out that children would display more egocentric speech when they were stressed, when they were in a stressful
Totally.
situation.
Yeah.
And so what they learned ultimately was that the egocentric the speech of a child is a um, coping strategy for self-regulation.
Yeah.
Okay, so what is the child trying to do? The child's trying to regulate their emotions by talking to themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what happens then is um, when they have enough neurological development, then they begin to articulate language in their heads, and the egocentric speech of a child goes inside and it becomes the voice in your head that sounds like you talking to you.
Mm. So do you think that the whole time then it must be the default mode network the whole time?
You're jumping ahead, but you're correct.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I
All
have
right.
a
More
slide.
on that later.
Yeah, no, you're right on target. That's exactly what happens. So
Okay.
let me say a couple more things before we get there. So
Yeah.
the major point here is that we human beings use inner speech to regulate our emotions.
Oh, 100%.
This is very, very important,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
so let's move on, and that transition to inner speech takes place at around 5 to 7 years. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so maybe you want to introduce the channel. Go ahead and do that.
Yeah, come on and join us. We here at Mastering Thought are all about helping you grow, how to understand your brain, and how to even rewire it for wonderful experiences. And a life that has a steadier outcome for you.
And I'm Dr.
So,
Mark Waller. I've been a marriage family therapist for 26 years. This is Christina Black, my trusty sidekick, who
hello.
is a cranial sacral therapist and massage therapist. And she's very much into the physical body and how
Hmm.
this all integrates into the body, which I find very fascinating, which I've been cut off from my body for many years. So,
We're trying to open the door. Everything is connected. But also, Mark, if you, because I'm afraid you might not share before we move on, Mark's been a licensed marriage and family therapist for over 25 years. Decades of experience, thousands of couples and people helped.
so
So he knows his stuff.
I had a new client this morning.
Hmm.
And one of the first conversations I have with people is they say, "Well, I've got this going on. I've got stress. I've got anxiety, et cetera, et cetera." And I will ask them the question, "How much of your symptoms are a result of your thinking?"
Hmm.
And this woman was very direct and instantaneously said all of it. It's all a result of my thinking. And she's been in therapy for years, off
Yeah.
and on with different people, trying to find the answer to this, and has had good experiences with therapists. But the key for her was, how do I overcome these thought processes that are creating these symptoms? So my conclusion after many, many years of working with people is that all emotional psychological problems that are not organic or related to damage of some kind or another are a
Right.
result of thinking,
Yeah.
which makes sense.
Totally.
All right.
Well, and I can say for me, since working with, I'm sure the exercise that you'll share later, like my life has been changed by changing my relationship to thought. My
Mm-hmm.
life has been changed by experiencing less like thinking that's chattering at me.
So how has it changed?
Well, so it's a quieter brain, and that's just easier to work with anyway. And I already have neurological differences. Like I already struggle with executive functioning in a couple different ways. And so just having things be quieter and steadier is really game changing for me. But also, I realized how much power I was giving to that voice in my head, how much power I was giving away by believing that voice in my head,
Uh-huh.
and and because it's there for survival. Like, yeah, it does have your back, but it doesn't always help you enjoy life. Sometimes it makes you just think that everything's a struggle
Hmm.
and you don't have to let it. And so realizing that it had the maturity of a 5 to 7 year old and it can be quieted, like I can still appreciate whatever it's trying to warn me about and take that, with a grain of salt. So that's kind of been the journey for me.
Great. Let
Yeah.
me
And
just mention one more thing before I forget it. We have an online community called Thought Masters. There is a link to the community below in the show notes. And the purpose of the community is to help you establish in some of these practices we talk about. So
yeah.
I'm sorry I cut you off. What were you saying?
Oh, that's okay. Um, Oh, well, it's not important, but yeah, I was just finishing wrapping up like intro stuff. But we also do these recordings every week. We're doing on the air for a while, so if you want to come back on Thursdays at 12 or whatever time it is for you, this is when we'll be here. So we love having you.
Yeah, and if you have any questions, put them in the comments right now. Even if it's on a different topic, we will absolutely get to that. Okay.
Just as long as it has to do with like relationships, consciousness, the way your brain works, like those kinds of questions. Is that what you're
Yeah,
asking about?
nuclear power is not my area of expertise, so we won't go down
But
that.
if you want to talk about superposition, we might be able to entertain that conversation.
Yeah, actually, I texted you earlier today. I've got an idea for a series about
Ooh.
how conscious. Here's a teaser. It's about how consciousness creates the universe. And I suddenly realized as I was researching this
Mm.
that the theory I was developing and reading about fit into the first day of creation in the Bible.
Uh-huh.
God created, there was a void and then light was created.
Mm-hmm.
I think I might have figured that out. So we're gonna maybe put together a series on that about the 6 days of creation and how it works with quantum mechanics and so forth.
Hmm.
I know
That's pretty
that sounds
interesting.
like, how does a country therapist talk about quantum mechanics? That's a good question.
How does anyone talk about quantum mechanics? We're
Well,
walking, talking stardust. That alone is a miracle.
there you go. All right, so
And we know it.
let's move this to the next point. So I want to talk about the brain for just a second. So
Okay.
now we have established, let me go back here. We have established that the inner speech starts out as um, uh, egocentric speech, which is a child talking out loud to themselves, and then it
Mm-hmm.
moves inside as we get more neural development around 5 to 7
Right.
years of age, where we have inner speech. Okay, and we're using that for self regulation. All
Hmm.
right, so let's fast forward here a little bit.
Or some of us have used it for self-abuse.
I thought we agreed not to
Not
talk about
anymore.
that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you
All
can
right.
learn new habits. Anyway, go ahead.
Okay, so far in the development of the brain, now what we have is we have emotions and we have a narrator, and that takes place in this part of the brain.
Okay.
And this is the limbic system over here, and this is
Hmm.
the amygdala right here. This is fight or flight. This is called the ACC, which is
Ah, anterior
the
something
anterior
cortex.
the anterior cingulate cortex.
Oh, cingulate. Okay.
This is where we measure suffering here. And right here
Okay.
is the dorsal lateral prefrontal cortex, right there. Okay,
Okay.
this is
And
where
the
we,
cingulate cortex is also the gyrus, right? They're interchangeable.
that's right.
Okay,
Well,
got it.
that's interesting. Okay, so now what happens, let's go back to this for a second. All of this develops by the time we're about 5 to 7 years of age.
Hmm.
Now, this is still developing over in here, but most of this over here has already been developed. And so
Okay.
this internal dialogue we're having about ourself, this is what we call me.
Hmm.
All right,
The concept of you.
right. So if I'm now this part of the brain, this medial prefrontal cortex, is able to self-reflect. In other words,
Yeah.
this is part of what you called the default mode network a minute ago.
Hmm.
So the default mode network has the ability to self-reflect, and one of the main nodes of the default mode network is the ACC and the medial prefrontal cortex right in here. So
Hmm.
when you say to yourself, "I'm having a bad day," you're self-referencing, aren't you?
Right. You're
So
taking
in
your observations and you're putting a story to it. You're
right,
creating meaning out of it.
right, and that's basically happening over here. Looking at this over here.
Hmm.
Now that's a crude
Hmm.
drawing, but you kind of get the idea.
Hmm.
All right, now here's what's happening. So this major part of the brain is pretty much all developed that early in life before we're teenagers.
Right.
Now maybe there's still development over here a little bit, but here's the key. This is where this gets interesting from my point of view. This part of the brain right here is where we have the ability to become aware that we're aware of ourselves.
Oh, that's why you feel it on the front of your forehead.
Maybe,
If
yeah.
you're sensitive. I swear I always feel my observer right here. It's like, yeah,
So
interesting.
a good way of describing this, well, I'm not sure it's a good way, but it's another way.
A way.
A way is this is the dorsal lateral prefrontal cortex, and a good way of saying it is the meta self.
Okay.
So this is me, and this is meta. Meta
Mm-hmm.
means it's above. So
Oh,
if
it
I,
does?
yeah,
I didn't know that.
yeah.
Okay.
And so let me go back here. So if I say I'm having a bad day, that's me. That's coming from me. But
Mm-hmm.
if I observe myself saying I'm having a bad day, that's coming from this observer up here.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'm calling the meta self. Okay,
Okay.
why is this important? This is important because this part of the brain up here is not
Above.
fully above, is not completely developed until you are 25 to 30 years of age.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what am I
Which
trying to
makes
say
a
here?
lot of sense.
Well, and so, you know, until we're that age, we can talk about ourselves, but we can't become self aware
Yeah.
until that part of the brain kicks in. Okay, where am I going with this? What am I trying to say? What I'm trying to say is through all this time, this narrator has been going on with this inner speech.
Hmm.
All that time, but then late in life, 25 years of age, we finally have the ability to observe this as a separate entity.
Hmm.
So by this comes in so late that the voice in our head has been speaking for so long that we have become addicted to that internal dialogue and believing it's who we are
Right.
before we have the ability to even question it.
It's the best con man there is.
Yeah.
We all are born with it.
And so this is why I'm saying we're addicted to thought, because
Yeah.
we don't even have brain function enough to question that until we're in our mid-20s. And by that time, this whole system of internal speech has been going on all that time, and we never had the ability to question whether that in fact was who we are.
Yeah. Pretty cool.
And so that's why we're addicted to thought.
Well, and it wasn't even until like the last 5 years or less than that, even that I had ever heard from anyone, which happened to be you, that you are not the voice in your head. I didn't
Right.
know that. And you'd think that that ought to be common knowledge. Like everyone should grow up hearing you are not the voice in your head. It's
Right.
a piece of your brain, and it convinces you that it's all of you, that it's
What
fairly representing you to yourself.
what I find interesting about presenting this information in this context is when you look at the brain development, the egocentric speech, how it becomes inner speech, and then the way the
Yeah,
brain develops and how we actually get self-awareness, we have no chance of getting ourselves out of this identification
right.
until somebody comes along and says, "Oh, by the way, you never had to do that. You didn't have to believe that."
Yeah, yeah. Our whole life is shaped by our beliefs.
Right. And so
Yeah,
what is our belief? Our belief is that the dialogue in our head is who we are.
right.
And that's not true.
And it doesn't hurt, well, it doesn't help us that that part of your brain is also the emotional center of the body. And so it can feed you emotions as it's telling you what you think,
Right.
until you learn how to be the observer and step outside of, um, whatever, however your brain is leading you, however kindly or unkindly your brain is leading you, you still have the choice to be in control of it.
And so that's right. And so the human condition is we struggle with our emotions because our emotions have a narrator.
Mm-hmm.
And we have given the narrator authority over us
Mm-hmm.
because we believe it's ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And by the
Yeah.
way, this area in the brain right here comes with a sense of self.
Yeah.
Well, how are we supposed to overcome that?
I
Well, the
know, but I want you to say it.
well, the only way we can overcome that is to stop believing that this is a self right here.
Yeah. Yep.
And of course, that's what our whole channel is devoted to, is to help people take the step of disidentification from the voice in their head.
Hmm.
So, do
I
you want to?
actually had a client this morning for massage, and she happened to like mention casually, like, yeah, my sister has panic attacks. More people in my family have panic attacks,
Mm-hmm.
but I recognize like I still do get nervous, like a lot. And I said, well, you can change that in like a month if you want, because she comes about once a month usually. Well, lately, and so I was like, yeah, the next time I see you, you could have a completely different relationship with anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
She's like, well, I will try that, so we'll see. But
So,
it doesn't take long.
lead us through moment mindfulness and explain how it works.
I would love to. Thanks for asking. So, moment mindfulness is, and sometimes we also refer to it as thought watching, so they're interchangeable. But moment mindfulness is an exercise that you can do that activates that like meta part of your brain, the observer. And all you have to do to start is be working with the thought that you are not the voice in your head. Sit down with your eyes open and wait for the next everyday non emotional thought to come out. It could be, what if I don't have a thought? It could be, I need to go to the grocery store later. It could be, I need to brush my hair. It doesn't really matter what it is. Right now, what we're trying to do is actually shut off the part of your brain that tells you it's you by watching thoughts. And all you have to do is be the observer. So wait for that everyday thought to come along, and then you're done. You've turned it off, that part of the default mode network, which is telling you who you are. You turn it off, and the longer and more times you spend with that turned off, it actually will cause a rewiring of your brain so that you no longer intuitively think that voice is you, and that you actually quiet the system down and begin to think more freely with less stress.
So when we say observe the next thought, the thought is coming from the narrator down here.
Mm-hmm.
This
Mm-hmm.
is the narrator. And the observer that's observing the thought is up here. And so when the observer observes the thought, these two parts of the front of the brain are in different networks. And these two networks, this is called the ACC, and this is called the default mode network. And when you're focused or concentrating on trying to notice a thought, it shuts off this network down here.
Mm-hmm.
And so as soon as you become the observer, the voice in your head stops.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what's the advantage of that? The advantage is every time you pay attention to the voice in your head, it goes away, and eventually you realize, wait a minute, that's not who I am. It
Yeah,
can't
because you
be
don't
who I
go
am.
away.
I didn't go
Yeah.
away. I'm still here.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Perfect.
And yet suddenly it's quieter.
Let me address that too, because the metaphor that I use a lot of times when I explain this to people is the voice in your head is like a bonfire. What does a bonfire need?
Fuel.
Exactly. So, what is the fuel for the voice in your head?
Mm, 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 mm. What is the fuel for the voice in your head? It wants to burn. I mean, just finding things to get worried about, I suppose.
Basically, in
Giving
my
you worried thoughts to get you anxious, maybe, to get you to act, to
oh,
survive.
the reason why we're fueling the voice in our head is because we believe it's ourselves.
Okay.
The belief the belief that it's you gives it fuel.
Okay. Yeah. It's like it's wanting to find things that you can believe.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes
So,
sense.
so what happens when you do this exercise? There is a moment of disidentification where the voice goes away, and you realize the voice is not you anymore.
Yeah.
And when you stop believing in the voice, your head starts getting quieter and quieter and quieter.
I like this analogy, but I actually even think that belief could be the oxygen that reaches the fire. Once you cut off the oxygen, the fire doesn't always die right away. The embers don't always die right away.
Uh-huh. I like that.
Anyway, yeah. And then the wood or something could be our fears or survival. I don't know. It was a fun analogy though. I liked it. It was a good one.
I don't know where you're going, but I'm on the trip with you.
We'll figure it out. We'll figure it out as we go. It's half the journey.
So let's summarize what we've gone over today and just kind of encapsulate it here.
Yeah.
So as children, when we learn language, we express ourselves in a certain way. It's been labeled by Piaget as egocentric speech. What happens is, as the child experiences neurological development, they're able to articulate language in their head, And the
Mm-hmm.
egocentric speech of a child goes inside and it becomes inner speech, which we use to try to regulate our emotions.
Yeah.
In other words, more commonly is when we experience anxiety, we talk to ourselves to try to make the anxiety go away.
Totally.
That's what we're doing. And so that egocentric speech of a child becomes the voice in your head, which we has a sense of self that goes with it. It's been there for a
Mm-hmm.
long, long time since we were little kids. So we believe that is who we are.
Mm-hmm. Right. We're born with it, kind of.
And by the
Feels
time
like it.
we were, in our mid-20s, we have the ability to become the observer of that self and question whether that's who we really are. And the practice of moment mindfulness, by just momentarily noticing an everyday thought and watching it go away, results in disidentification.
Mm-hmm.
And it is about half the time it's a light bulb moment that happens. About the other half
Yeah.
of the time, it happens over the course of a few days.
Uh-huh.
But this is days, not
Interesting.
weeks. And once disidentification takes place, all of the thought related emotional psychological issues that we have go away, or at least become accessible to very easy therapy or
Mm-hmm.
self help.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
I mean,
It's so good.
I can tell you this with surety that you and I've had conversations after you awoke. I'm not saying that after you have awakened, and I've
I'm
asked you
okay with the
questions.
woke.
I've asked you questions that you immediately were able to answer.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I know. It's like you can whatever. I used to realize I was like frozen in bed every morning.
Right,
Um, I remember that was like even something we handled on the show, and you were like, "Why is it like? What does it have to do with your early childhood learning?" And immediately I
right.
figured it out,
Yeah,
and that would have probably taken a while, quite a few therapy sessions before, you know.
exactly.
Yeah, it's so neat.
So this is what we've developed here to set people free, and it works.
Mm-hmm.
All you have to do is tune in. Let us help you. We have an online community where we help guide people through this process called Thought Masters. The link is in the show notes. And if there's anything we can do for you, reach out to us. Email address is in the show notes as well. And if you want to, chat with Christine or myself, we're dedicated to help you make this transition to get out of your head.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Come reach out. And if you have any questions or comments right now, this is a great time to ask Mark and myself anything you're curious about.
So we'll pause here for just a second. We're going to do these live streams every Thursday at noon, except for the rest of July. Um,
Mm-hmm.
you notice my shirt. It's red, white, and blue. That means
Oh, so festive.
yeah. Tomorrow is the 4th of July for those who are watching
Yes.
in the middle of winter next winter.
Yeah.
So we'll be
At
we'll
one
be
time it was summer.
we'll pause these for about 3 weeks. Um, and if you want to join us later today, we're doing another live stream at 6:15 with Vanessa Marino, who's the manager of our online community, Thought Masters,
Hmm.
and we would encourage you to join us there.
She thinks of good questions, man. I like her brain.
She's great. She's very fresh.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else?
You're addicted to thought, and you don't have to be. It's not your fault. It happens to everybody. Don't beat yourself up about it.
Yeah, it's a
And we'll see you
biological
next time.
problem we have to overcome.
Yeah, it's just a mechanical thing. It's all right.
That's what it is. Yep.
Yeah,
All right.
I think that's it. Thank you,
All right.
Mark.
Thank you. Until we meet again, we'll see you. Like and subscribe, please.
Yeah. And please go find some videos of ours. We've got tons of stuff that can help. Please share one with a friend.
There will be some end cards that we add later after the live stream. And please watch some more of our material. We'd love to have you as a viewer.
See you on the next one.
Bye bye.